What is up? What is up, YouTube? I can wait 20 minutes. How y'all doing? Yeah. Diddy, oh my gracious, man. Oh my God, there's so many. Ari Melber. Marble. Check it out, man. Diddy exposed on new secret tapes. Dirtiest business. I should start all over. 50 Cent history. Y'all Netflix. Y'all hit that subscribe. I should start. Beep. Blooper. Y'all hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell, man. Hey, I'm over here. I'm hungry. That's what the problem is.
What do the newly released videos of Shawn Diddy Combs reveal? Why does 50 Cent have such a long-standing rivalry or beef with Shawn Diddy Combs? And what is important in the new Netflix documentary that 50 made about Diddy? That's what I'm going to get into in this video. I'm Ari Melber, journalist, lawyer, and a big music obsessive. You could call me a music journalist as well. And I'm going to talk about all this. I just interviewed 50 Cent about his documentary. I'm going to break down what matters here and go into a little more depth than sometimes we get to do on TV. I'm also an anchor at MS Now. You can subscribe to my YouTube if you're interested in these kind of breakdowns. But let's start with these videos.
Okay, let's see what he got.
It's pretty extraordinary when you see powerful people make self-incriminating videos or evidence. Before there even was casual video, there was surveillance audio. The entire Nixon presidency fell apart, and he was the only president to resign under pressure because of Watergate, which boiled down to audio tape that he made. Diddy also made the same mistake as Nixon, having the kind of power where when you make any tape, audio, video, or whatever, or other evidence, you think you're going to control it. So you think you will use it as needed or for your ends or maybe against some people selectively, right? You say, I got this tape on this conversation, whatever, and you don't think you could ever lose enough power to lose control of the video. Control, a big theme for Diddy.
But how you think you're going to control the footage? You're not thinking, Diddy. He wasn't thinking that night. He definitely wasn't thinking that night. How you going to control when you didn't even pay the people to collect the footage? I can see if you hire somebody and you say, use this camera or hold my cell phone and film me. And at the end of the day, I'm going to not pay you. That way I get my cell phone back or something. This is clown. This is clown news.
People selectively, right? You say, I got this tape on this conversation, whatever, and you don't think you could ever lose enough power to lose control of the video. Control, a big theme for Diddy. These videos that are a big part of the documentary, which is out on Netflix, you can watch it on Netflix, and later in this YouTube, I'm going to show some of those videos, including 50 Cent's new response. But the videos show Diddy in moments that he thought were private, talking to his lawyer days before his arrest, which suggests that he thought he would retain control of the video. Indeed, you don't want to talk to your lawyer where it's privileged and you can actually get a benefit from that and then leak or lose control of it. That breaks the privilege, which is why we all now get to see on the video Diddy apparently plotting with his lawyer. So you have that. You have him talking negatively about people whose hands he shook, basically, making him seem like he's two-faced. I'm going to say more about that and a lot more. So I asked 50 how he got the videos. He gave the same answer really journalists always give, which is they're not going to disclose their sources. He had a little bit of a smile and said, I got it, though. And that's one of the key pieces in the documentary that's caused a lot of attention, because somehow a material that Diddy's team has since responded on, commented, they say these videos were part of him documenting his life, which he's done before, that it's not authorized. They view it as unlawful and unauthorized video. Of course, documentaries, journalists of all kinds deal in all sorts of materials that people don't want to get out. So that's part of what's already gotten people a lot of people interested in the documentary. I'm going to go through a couple themes right now. The first one is that Diddy was always sort of hiding in plain sight. We know a lot more about him now. There was the terrible video from hotel footage that showed him very clearly committing the crime of domestic battery and abusing his then girlfriend Cassie. And in the case, which I can talk about as a lawyer, that video was played, and it's obviously extremely negative. The jury, we know now from the documentary, 2 jurors spoke out, and they viewed it negatively, but they said that because they weren't asked to prosecute or give a guilty verdict on on domestic abuse, domestic violence, they didn't convict on that. In other words, it wasn't one of the charges. And in cases, juries are supposed to look, and they're instructed under law by the judge to look only at the charges listed, not other things. So we had kind of the answer from the jury, but from that evidence and a lot of other things over the years, you have this duality to Diddy, where on the one hand, he was one of the biggest figures in hip hop, both as an executive, a producer, and later as a rapper. And this documentary kind of goes through and looks at that history, but argues that he was always playing this game in his life and in his career. The documentary has a lot of evidence and argues that basically, while he looks worse now, and the more recent case kind of showed people what he's like, that there was always this trail of problems for him. And yet in public, he was supposed to be the shiny suit, happy guy. Jay Electronica has this song, Shiny Suit Theory. Everybody who follows hip hop remembers Puffy and Mace and the whole larger than life vibe and the party vibe. And that he was selling that as fundamentally kind of upbeat. He wasn't initially positioning himself as like a pure gangster, negative rapper. And yet ultimately, what you see here is all of this evidence of him being a very dark and sinister figure with the allegations of violence, of control, of domestic abuse. And so the documentary, if you see it, it's 4 episodes, runs like 4 hours. I was just going to hit a couple points in my notes here that it goes through how from his very earliest days, it argues that he actually was much more of a negative force than people realized, starting with him being a promoter who was attached to an event, helped organize an event where people got hurt and died, and looking back on that more negatively, looking at the infamous New York nightclub shooting when he was with J-Lo, where Shawn, a different rapper, ultimately caught the charge and the conviction, but Diddy somehow skated scot-free. And all these other early problems with how he treated other artists and business, which again, that doesn't mean you're the worst person in the world. The music industry,
damn near close,
over the years has been constantly attacked for how artists are mistreated or cheated out of money. That doesn't make it okay, but it doesn't make it a uniquely Diddy problem. The other thing about that duality, the sort of thing I'm mentioning is, it's one thing to sort of say, oh, you want to be low key and you have some secret part of your life or crime. It's another thing to do almost what might seem more like a Walter White thing. Oh, you're just a chemistry teacher. No, you're a secret drug lord. Or Bill Cosby, to pick a different example, where he didn't just have his problems that were ultimately charged in court of drugging and abusing women. Against that backdrop, he was out in public constantly holding himself out as this moral savior and this moral leader and giving lectures on respectability and other things. And so, although I wouldn't go that far with Diddy, there is this villain in plain sight thing that at least the doc explores, that he wanted to be this public, shiny, mogul figure while pursuing all these bad things. The other question I get a lot, and I'm going to turn to that now, is okay, what's the problem between 50 and Diddy? And if you follow hip hop or their lives closely, you may know all about it, but this is one of those funny things where people keep asking me this. I just had 50 on the program. I talked to him about it, but to dive into it, there's 2 basic flashpoints. One is that they were rivals in the New York hip hop scene. And if you follow New York hip hop, it's often been an energy and really a mood that there should be one leader at a time. There's a king of hip hop, so to speak. And we hear a lot about the rivalries of East Coast, West Coast, which is relevant to Diddy and other places. But inside New York, there is that view. And so you had the early days, if you go back far enough, where you have certain artists coming out of New York and setting the stage. You have the Nas Jay-Z rivalry over New York. Then you have Jay-Z sort of, and this has been reported, saying, oh, well, 50's coming, he's going to be big. And he almost, at that time, was stepping back. Jay-Z and 50, no love lost there. 50's more vocal about it, but he constantly attacks Jay-Z in various ways and views him as sort of a New York rival. And then likewise, because 50 feels that he's sold more records than a lot of people, has one of the biggest tours of all time in hip hop to this day. Final Lap tour, I think, grossed only second to Drake and Kendrick for a solo rap tour. And so he really views himself as the king of New York and views others who've tried to claim that title, we won't even get into Ja Rule right now, as his adversary. So that's one. And then 2, 50's publicly said repeatedly that Diddy asked him to go shopping, that he viewed that as a great offense, and speaks to like a misunderstanding of the relationship that Diddy had. And combine that together, he has trolled and attacked Diddy online for years. Then he said he had this project and he was going to call it Did He Do It was the working title. Ultimately, now it's called Sean Combs' The Reckoning. It's now #1 on Netflix. And so what you see is you're not getting a presentation in the doc, and I don't think anyone would claim, from some completely neutral outfit. You have real reporting, you have real witnesses, but 50's coming in as a kind of an adversary. If you say, oh, well, does that mean it's truthful or not? I think it's actually interesting. There's a corollary to this in the law, which is that sometimes you just want the evidence and you look at the evidence. Other times you look at the dueling stories. That's why law and journalism have so much in common, because sometimes you say, well, let's just hear exactly what the one side says, the prosecution, which is going to be driving at a certain version of events. Then let's hear the defense. Then let's let them cross-examine everybody. And from that, the jury, and by extension the public, learn about information, right? That's different than going to just an encyclopedia or Wikipedia, reading an entry that has some stuff in it and moving on. And so you could probably think of this documentary as the critical version. It's 50's version. He worked with Alexandria Stapleton and other people. He's got sources in there. But that's the version. And then if you say, well, what's the other side? Well, Diddy's incarcerated right now, of course, but 50 and others would argue that Diddy's version is what dominated for many years. That's why he's on the cover of Vanity Fair with the love headline. That's why he, even after some of these problems, seemed to always redeem his legacy. And they would argue this is a counter to that. So I think, again, depending on how interested you are in going down this road or thinking about the doc, or everyone who might watch some or all 4 hours of it, that's sort of what it's coming out of. And I asked 50 about that, and we talked about these issues before, and it's sort of, to me, an interesting part of being a music journalist is sort of when you get to use the skills or the approach of journalism and you talk to artists and you learn about all this. The other point I wanted to mention is that, this matters more than just Diddy. If you say, oh, well, who cares about Diddy as a person, some people do, justice matters, but he also was such a key figure in hip hop as the executive who came out of Uptown Records to start Bad Boy. He was basically fired, but got to take the artist Biggie Smalls with him and built out what became a dominant form of hip hop, both for New York and around the world. And so Diddy reflects a lot of what hip hop was at that time. And then over the years, he was one of the first people to step out in the mogul mode that we've now seen others do, both in hip hop specifically, but also others who are considered talent, artists, musicians or actors who start doing all this other stuff and get taken seriously or make more money off the brand equity, the following they have, but in other lanes. That's almost become sort of normalized now. But before there was social media, Diddy was someone who did pioneer that. And so he went from starting Bad Boy and building himself up to having these liquor lines of Ciroc, working with Diageo, DeLeon, Shawn John Clothing. He started Revolt, which was a big channel and online property that still matters in hip hop. And so you're sort of looking at someone as not just the person they are, but also what it says about hip hop, that either some of this stuff was known about and got away with it for so long, and especially the treatment and abuse of women. And there's always a big distinction between art. You can make a gangster movie. You can depict all kinds of violence against all kinds of people. The difference between that and then, wait, is that what's actually going on in real life? There's also an overcompensation kind of dynamic that is explored in the doc and that I think many people have talked about. There's a quote from someone saying, well, Diddy basically was a paper gangster, not a real gangster. And you see that he grew up and wasn't really of the streets in the sense that some other artists have been, and wasn't personally maybe a big tough guy. And far be it from me to figure out who's really tough in that sense, but the documentary explores that basically he was overcompensating for that and then pretending to be tough, and then more and more acting that out and becoming a version of this sort of villain that he wanted to be, or at least against certain people. The critique being, well, first of all violence would be wrong if it's not in self-defense, but second, that he was doing that only against people that he thought he could get away with it for. 50 told me in the interview, and I'm going to show some of it coming up, like I mentioned, that, oh, well, he never saw him as tough, and he's worked with his family, and it's fine. The other issue in the doc that I think for people who might come in and this is their source material, and they're not maybe knowing a lot about the background, or they might not be watching or reading a bunch of other stuff, is while it does reinterpret Diddy's whole career and these other problems and put it in a more critical or negative light, it also throws around questions and allegations that have never been proven in investigative reporting or the court of law. So it basically has people suggesting, sometimes without much evidence, that maybe Diddy was ultimately the one behind the infamous murder of Tupac Shakur. That's an unsolved mystery of sorts that's stretched many, many years. There are some legal developments recently, and there's some allegations made but haven't been proven or convicted in court. And so that's a heavy thing to add on. You have all of Diddy's personal stuff, the violence against, as I mentioned, Cassie, but then you're kind of broadening out and throwing that in. And there's also a fairly lengthy kind of reinterpretation of how he famously publicly grieved the other big tragic murder of the time in hip hop of Notorious B.I.G. Biggie Smalls. And it argues that he benefited from that they didn't pay for Biggie's funeral, that he stepped into the void, that he wanted to be an artist, the famous Sting interpolation, Missing You, that they did, which became one of the biggest hits. All of that is looked at in a much more critical or skeptical light. I think that's fine. This is storytelling, and everyone's here to share their side of it. I do think, I remember, because as a hip-hop head, it was such a big series of events and those two murders, and everyone could see in the real time, and some people were learning about Diddy from stepping into that void or that moment, how much he was taking his close friend and artist's death and then making that part of the music, grieving in public, and going on forward from there. I don't know, though, that if you took out all the other negatives and the violence, if someone just did that artistically, I don't know that that's easy to judge in hindsight unless you've been through it, because they're going through grief. They were friends and worked together, and then they grieve through their art. That's what a lot of people do. So whether that was all just monetizing a tragedy or something else, I think is definitely open to interpretation. And then you, again, factor in that 50 is a big critic and looking at those issues that way. I'm just looking at my notes of anything else I wanted to mention. I mean, yeah, if you're not super into hip-hop, it may not matter as much to you, but hip-hop and country are the two dominant American-made cultural genres that matter. Still the most listened to in our country, and they're what a lot of people around the world think of as America. And so the fact that he was, the Bad Boy was founded and backed by this individual makes you think a little more about them. I mean, some of the notes I have was just looking at, they estimated Bad Boy's worth at the time in the 90s at 100 million. That'd be a lot more today. Biggie, Mace, Faith Evans, Total, 112, The Lox, the Biggie Life After Death album, which again was part of work that had already been made but became bigger after his death, debuted at #1, diamond status. Harlem World, 4 times platinum. That's one of the later artists. So you had this sort of huge cultural impact that matters to this day, that's now tied to a figure who is increasingly controversial for what he's been convicted of, and also what he's been seen to do on video, even though the domestic battery wasn't convicted. Final word legally on the case. It was a very split verdict. It was, on balance, most lawyers would say, pretty strongly went in Diddy's favor, because all the serious charges he beat, including RICO, and what was left was what they call Mann Act violations, which are pursuing a type of prostitution. And that's unusual because most people, if it was only a prostitution case, it wouldn't have been dealt with this heavily as a federal case. He got this multi-year sentence. He served part of it and got time served on that. So Diddy would be out within about 2 years. And ultimately, when you look at that case, which got a lot of attention, that's not what this whole breakdown's about. Prosecutors had evidence to show Diddy was a kind of monster. But they couldn't get him convicted of being a monster. They couldn't get him on the big RICO conspiracy, the idea that he was, at a legally accountable level, responsible for that kind of sex trafficking. And so they ended up with prostitution charges, which alone would not even normally be brought. I try to say that all straightforward in a clear way. That's not picking sides on the victims, some of whom told terrible and believable stories, including Cassie. But it is a reminder of how the justice system works. And then you might say skeptically, well, it doesn't work like that for everybody, and that's true. People who didn't have such high-priced lawyers and maybe even some of the storytelling and marketing savvy of this defendant might have also fared differently. But you had a New York jury that heard all the evidence and ultimately landed where it did. So again, you can subscribe to my YouTubes. A lot of them are about a range of law and news. This one about hip-hop and law. And then coming up, you're going to see some of those videos I mentioned. You've gotten your hands on some extra new material people are going to see for the first time, including this video. Any journalist would want to know how you got it, but it is Shawn Diddy Combs in the heat of this, right before the arrest for the trial we just discussed, in private moments, talking to his lawyer, cameras running. Let's take a look.
It's the middle of September and there's still no indictment.
Bro, then you have to have a spokesman. You have to have some sort of comms to constantly be pushing that, Mark. Because you may just be a person that you just may watch CNN. So you at the wrong place looking to see what the people with the possible jurors are thinking. It could be somebody that has dealt in the dirtiest dirty business of media and propaganda.
50, how'd you get it, and what does that scene show?
Well, I mean, you're a journalist, Ari. Ari, you would not disclose your sources.
We usually don't.
Yeah, but I got it. Yeah.
What he said.
and what do you think it conveys? Because we see someone trying to pull the strings and talking about, he would say affecting, others would say manipulating the public views of the allegations.
I think that, one big theme of the series is to go behind the scenes to really understand how brilliant you could say Shawn Combs is at marketing, at owning his narrative, controlling the narrative at all times. And so why would that stop, when his life is on the line? So I think that, on its face, that's what it is. But as you get deeper in the film, you start to realize, perhaps how some of these tactics, how they really came to present themselves, during the trial.
You show that, his abilities, his early rise. Right. Alexandra, you also give time to victims of the alleged abuse. Some of the cases are in different procedural postures. And you show victims who were women and men. Why is that important?
Because, victims of sexual assault, sexual violence, that should... gender should not be a part of that conversation. When you are a victim, you are a victim. And I think that, this series was a platform in a way for these alleged victims to come forward, give their truth, put context to their situations when so much of it was ripped out, and we just the world was going for the salacious headlines, and they really had the time to tell their story.
Hey, it's Ari and 50. Don't forget to subscribe.
Ha 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 ha. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think that I don't know about this second sequel stuff, and I'm pretty sure it can be, man, because there's a lot of stuff they left out. A whole lot of stuff, bruh. Diddy got in trouble at Howard. Howard University took back the graduation award or whatever because he didn't graduate from all kinds of stuff, man. His school, did he lie and say he was about a part of a school or something? Anyway. Hey, I'm gonna get on up out of here. I'm gonna go ahead and get me something to eat. Y'all take it light, take it slow. Tell him Uncle Mike told you so. Peace out.